Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am joined by a friend of mine, Katie Hile Patrick, who is the Executive Director at Catholic Social Services of Southern Nebraska, and as well as the founder of a nonprofit called Totonga Bomoi. Oh, Bomoi. Excuse me, Katie. It is a nonprofit that provides sewing classes and business education for women in the Congo. And the reason why I'm having Katie on the show today is just because she is an inspiration, not only to me, but to so many. I know many of the people that work for Katie, and they all say the same thing, that she's an exceptional leader, and also that she just has a heart for developing others. And so I just wanted her to just share her story today, just to inspire all those out there who maybe feel like, yes, I've been given gifts, but maybe you feel afraid to actually step out. So I just want Katie to share her story just to encourage you to step out and use the gifts that God has given you. And so without further ado, Katie, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do?
Sure. So let's see. So where to start? So right after I finished my graduate degree at Seton Hall University back in 2010, I wanted to get some, field experience or on the ground experience. My degree was in diplomacy and international relations, and then I had a special focus on refugee resettlement and development. And so I had applied to an organization called Boica. It's an Italian organization, and it's for lay volunteers and missionaries to join the Canossian Daughters of Charity in their missions around the world. And so I applied, and it wasn't really, I thought it was an interview, but it was really just a conversation and basically a placement. And so the religious sister that I, had the Zoom call with back in 2010, before I think Zoom really took off, we hopped on the call, and I was prepared, to answer questions on my resume and other volunteer experience. And she really we prayed, and she went into the conversation and asked if I'd be willing to go to the Congo. And so I was like, okay, sure. So kind of got on the fast track to do volunteer missionary work in Africa, which had been a dream of mine since I was young. And so shortly after I graduated in May, I was in Rome for some training in August for a couple of months, and then went to the Democratic Republic of Congo for 1 year, from October 2010 until October 2011. And so while I was there doing mission work and supporting the sisters and the other volunteers, I befriended a young woman in that community, and she was a sewing teacher at the all-girls Catholic high school in our village. And shortly before leaving Congo, so I'd say probably maybe even it was the month I left in October of 2011, she had asked me for $1,000 to build a home for her family. And so, of course, with all the academic knowledge or experience that I had in graduate school, I, instead of giving her the money, asked her if she could make 25 handbags that I could bring back and sell to family and friends. And so she was super excited to be able to use her talents in that way. And she created, looking back, very simple, beautiful handbags. They got more complicated for us as time went on, and we got into the market and the competition there. But very simple, beautifully made handbags that I was able to sell to family and friends. And that was really important to me too, to bring the beauty and the joy that I had experienced in Congo back with me. And so I didn't want to just bring stories of the poverty and the conflict and different things that are certainly important. But that's not all that defines Congo. And so I was happy to have these beautiful items to bring back. And so as time went on, it's quite the story, but we just kept our communication going. more women got involved, and I sold their product here in the US for a few years. And then we, upon my return to Congo in 2014, organized as a cooperative. The following year, I returned again, and we had a business education training for the women who had been sewing for us. And then it was that business education piece that really kind of changed the trajectory of our nonprofit work in Congo and got us to where we are today, which is an organization dedicated not only to provide sewing classes to women in communities throughout Congo, but as a place where we also provide business education so that the women have the tools, the knowledge, the resources they need to become entrepreneurs.
That is incredible. So you mentioned something in the beginning saying that it's always been a dream of yours to do missionary work in Africa. Where did that stem from? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Gosh, I feel like those commercials that you sometimes would see on television where it's asking to help the poor of the world and those who have been orphaned and are struggling. And so I remember seeing that probably when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And it just really spoke to me. And all throughout like junior high, high school, college, I got very involved with local nonprofits and volunteering. And there was one experience I had when I was a sophomore in high school, and that was here in Lincoln, and I volunteered with Catholic Social Services, so where I work now. And that was my first encounter with a refugee family, and it was a mom and her children from Afghanistan. And just the friendship that we formed, my learning about where they came from, and really kind of watching what they had to go through to integrate and rebuild here in Lincoln, it just really inspired me to want to do more of that work professionally even in high school, as I was growing up. So.
Yeah. Wow. So no, that is really great, and it's great to see that it's full circle that you're now working as Catholic Social Services.
Yes. that wasn't actually part of the plan, but it worked out really well. So
it did. And can you tell, for those who don't know, like, what does Catholic Social Services do? I know I believe each state has its own version, right?
Yeah, so most states, most dioceses have a Catholic Charities, and that has an affiliation with the National Organization of Catholic Charities USA. But CSS was organized back in 1932 as an independent nonprofit in our diocese, and we've just kind of kept at it. So we do have some, I guess, interactions. We share resources, with CCUSA, but CSS is its own independent nonprofit. And our mission is to perform the works of mercy in response to the call of God. And so we do that through kind of like an ever expanding network of services that are always responding to the needs of the community. So right now we have our emergency services program, and that provides rent and utility assistance to families, among a lot of other things like personal care items and support for the homeless. And then we have the food market and meal services program, refugee resettlement we're very involved in. We've welcomed a lot of Afghans and Ukrainians over the past couple of years. And then our immigration and legal services program, where we're helping former refugee clients and others in the community with their immigration needs. So family reunification, citizenship, permanent residency, all that. And then, of course, we have our St. Gianna program, and that's helping women and children fleeing domestic violence, and then women who are experiencing either a crisis pregnancy or an unplanned pregnancy. And then we have 4 offices. So I'm headquartered here in Lincoln, and then we also have our outreach offices in Auburn, Hastings, and Imperial.
Yeah, Catholic Social Services truly does a lot. And like you, I actually volunteered for them while I was in high school, and then even in college, I taught English through there. And so it really does a lot for the community. And I'm just, every time I hear all the people that it's impacted, I'm just blown away. So I'm glad that you're involved with that.
Yeah, that's awesome that you taught English. Was it down at the O Street office?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
really loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to Totonga Bomoi, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so it means build our future in the local language of Lingala. Um, I think had I known it was going to become like the nonprofit it is today, I might have picked something simpler.
Oh,
Um, but, but I remember being in Congo again, just like right before I left, and just talking with some of my local friends and wanting to find something very meaningful and powerful for the women in the community to get behind. And so that's where it originated, and it made the most sense for all of us at the time that it would be in the local language.
yeah.
And so I just have to keep embracing the educational opportunity to tell people what it means and the pronunciation and everything. But Lingala is very um what's the word? Uh oh my gosh, phonetic. It's pretty easy to kind of see it and guess at its pronunciation, which you did very well. So
Oh, well, thank you. I practiced before. And I was like, I hope I'm practicing right.
yeah.
But I guess, how was it like for you transitioning to a different country and establishing yourself in the community and building credibility in a language and in a culture that was not your own? Because I've gone through similar experiences when I've lived in Spain or in Nicaragua, and it's a process, and not everyone can make that transition smoothly. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, it wasn't smooth, and I think I made it more complicated because I went with an Italian organization. So not only was I in a country that spoke French and Lingala, but all of my peers who I volunteered with were speaking Italian.
Oh gosh.
So it was, and I had gotten or received my minor in German in college. And so by the time I ended up in Congo, I was so confused. I was probably not probably, I know that I was like forming sentences with all of those different languages, and no one understood me. I hardly understood myself. And um, just as someone who really thrives on relationships and friendships, not being able to build those because of the language barrier was pretty challenging in the beginning. So there was one other volunteer who spoke English from Denver, Colorado, and her and I got to be best friends. And we still are. So we'll also admit, like, there's only so much you can say to one person. It was just a lot of, I guess, trial and error. The big thing was the language, and then in terms of like different cultures, I had always been very eager to go to Africa and to be there, and just a lot of my volunteer work kind of informed me of just different cultural practices and things like that. So that wasn't too difficult, I think, for me. Probably what was the most challenging was when I left Congo and came back to the US. And so it's that reverse culture shock that I didn't really know existed until I experienced it. And, to anyone who's been to a developing country or lived in a place with limited resources and not a lot of technology, um, it's amazing. That simplicity, that finding joy in all of the small things, knowing that people are what matter most and that you don't have all of those distractions. I miss that life a lot. I love what I do here with work, but there's just something to be said about waking up every day and, going to work, and the only people you interact with are those in front of you, not those on a screen, which is good too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like, if you've had similar experiences in Nicaragua, it just, I don't know, you get to go so much deeper with people so naturally. And so kind of coming back to the busyness and the noise was hard.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I also miss those days when, like, I remember our electricity would cut off in Nicaragua randomly, and nobody freaked out. Everybody was like, okay, well, let's grab the candles, and then we would just sit outside and just talk and look at the stars. And I felt just like you were saying, like very in the moment, very present to the people around me and not distracted by so much. And and then coming back here, one of the biggest shockers was going to the grocery store. And I
Mhm.
remember I wanted to get cereal, and I was used to having only like three options, or maybe even two options in Nicaragua. And then going to the grocery store and thinking, oh my gosh, I was just so overwhelmed looking at the like entire aisle of types of cereal. And I'm like, I just want one. So many options. So
Yeah. Yeah. And because I feel like those situations also teach you how to be very resourceful. And so, like, I can to this day walk into a kitchen without a menu, without maybe staples, or I don't know, without all the ingredients, but you won't go hungry. Like,
yeah,
I will find something to cook and it'll be okay. I might
yes.
not eat well, but you'll eat. So I appreciate that skill that I learned there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us some stories of some of the people that you've met that have impacted your journey while working there, and even now as you operate this nonprofit overseas?
Yeah. So when I went back in 2019, I had met with Esther, and she was one of our sewing instructors in a small village called Wacha. And so the way she came to our program was she, I think, was a student. Yeah, she was a student at the high school where my friend taught. And so Esther then was a participant in our nonprofit since the beginning. So she was one of the women who made the handbags way back in 2011, 2012. And so she had been busy doing that. And then she moved away. And then we recruited her back to go to another village to teach women how to sew. And so she worked with them for about a year. And then when I came down in 2019, those women that she taught participated in our business training for 1 week, completed the program, received their diplomas, and she was able to, pass out those certificates. And just her excitement and being so proud of these young women that she taught was really cool, very, very beautiful. And so I was thankful for her and the work that she did for Totonga Bomoi, not just in the beginning sewing the items, but then also teaching these women. And so after we had the graduation, her and I were just, and a few of us were walking around through the village, and she shared with me her story of how Totonga Bomoi helped her through a really difficult time. And what happened was, a couple years before, her husband was killed, and he was a political activist. And so he was speaking out against the corruption in the country and was killed for that. And so, just the way she talked about him and how much she missed him and how much she loved him and really struggled to move on. She used her work at Totonga Bomoi as a distraction. And so she told me, that she'd come early every day and stay very late and just work and work and work because that's all she could do. But that over time, she was able to build community with the other women of Totonga Bomoi. And then she came upon some difficult financial times, being widowed. And the cooperative, Totonga Bomoi, the women raised some money just out of their own pockets and gave it to her.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so she was just super grateful for that assistance. So she had the friendships, she had that financial assistance when she needed it. And then that's what made her, really motivated her to give back and to become one of our teachers. And so just knowing, after the fact, of course, how much Totonga Bomoi and the work that we did mattered to her and what it got her through and where it, has her now. It was really cool. So it's just good to kind of build that friendship with her. And we communicate, I'd say probably weekly on either Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And she just had a daughter a few months ago. So it's just nice to be able to, with the technology, of course, to keep those relationships going. But there's just so many stories like that, every woman who's participated in our program has their own challenges, their own sufferings, and the way that Totonga Bomoi is able to help them get through that is great. So yeah, that'd be like just one of many stories, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What is, I guess, the future for Totonga Bomoi?
What is it? So gosh, that kind of like thinking back over the past 10 years or so, we've really kind of it's been quite the journey, because in the first probably 5 years, we focused a lot on product. And so I would go to trade shows and craft fairs and community events and really be focused on selling the product that the women made and then shipped over. And they did everything from handbags to bow ties to neckties to laptop cases to aprons. I mean, we really tried everything. And that was good, but it just felt like that wasn't the answer. It wasn't really what was best for the women in this community. And so when I did the business training with them, and that was a curriculum that was designed by another nonprofit in Colorado, or out of Colorado. And it was a curriculum designed specifically for entrepreneurs in the developing world. And so it had like topics like dream big, business basics, marketing, customer service, record keeping, setting up shop, just really cool lessons. And so when we instructed that in 2015, it went over really well. And then the original women of the cooperative started then teaching other women how to sew. So it's like they were inspired to create this own program of their own for sewing training. And that just really took off and is completely organized and managed by the women. And then we have one program manager. His name is Boniface. And he was my interpreter and one of our instructors back in 2019 when we did another round of the business training. And he's just so great. He's just, the women love him. He's very charismatic. He's very joyful. He is deeply rooted in his Catholic faith. And that really just informs kind of his outlook on serving the poor and serving those around him. Does a phenomenal job. So right now we continue with the sewing project. We do the business training annually, and we just wrapped up a capital campaign a couple months ago and raised $50,000 to build an entrepreneurship center in Congo.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so great. So we'll be building that here, breaking ground in just a few weeks. And so the future of Totonga Bomoi is very bright. It's going to include sewing classes and then the business education, which we're going to expand to everyone in the community and hopefully offer that quarterly, so 4 times a year. And it won't be required that you have to be part of our cooperative or that you have to be female. You can, anyone can participate, learn the business skills for, whatever business they want to create. So yeah, it's really good. And the best part is that it belongs to them. in Congo. Like I'm here doing the fundraising, happy to do it. But they govern it, the organization, they manage it, they recruit participants, they submit monthly reports, to me, but mostly for their benefit so they can kind of manage and measure their own success.
That is incredible. And that's actually how I feel like development work should be. Like it should be sustainable. There should be buy-in. There should be like not just like the founder that does everything and is outside from the situation. So I think you're doing an excellent job. I mean, not that you need my approval from this, but just having been in the Peace Corps and just learned about what true development, sustainable development looks like, I just see that that's what's happening through your organization. So that's so great. Wow. So I know you are a very busy woman, not only with this nonprofit, but working at Catholic Social Services and leading that organization. And you are a mother of twins and a wife. How do you balance all of that? I mean, I don't even want to use the word balance, but like, how do you integrate all those different aspects of yourself and still remain sane?
Yeah. So I think that it actually came about somewhat recently where you just kind of think about that self-awareness. And in this case, it wasn't that. It was my husband kind of from the outside telling me what I needed to have energy every day. And I learned that as much as I love, being around people, that I need to recharge alone. So a bit of kind of an introvert, I guess. And so when he made that comment, and this was just like a few months ago, I started to recognize that I need some quiet in the morning before I start my day. And so just this morning, and this isn't every morning. I mean, I'm a pretty early riser, but this morning was like at 4:45 a.m. And it was because our dog woke me up. But he did, and it was fine. And so I just stayed up and I made coffee. My husband got up around 5 and went to the gym. And so we both kind of have our routines in the morning, but typically from like 5:30 to 7 is just quiet. I'll read, I'll work, I'll pray, I'll reflect. And if I have like that time in the morning, then it really feeds the energy that I need to, go through the days, which which I need. So, because like you just, with work, and then of course, the twins are 16 months now. And so they are running, I mean, they're walking really fast. I wouldn't call it running, but they're moving really quick around the house. And we always want to, I mean, the week nights are pretty quiet. But on the weekends, we're always with family or going to parks and just getting out and about. We like to go walk around at Shields. So there's things that you kind of learn to do with infants and little toddlers. So yeah, it's just having those priorities of, a good spiritual life, very close with my family, and now knowing that I need to have that alone time every morning is great. So
yeah, no, that is good to have that, to be aware, and that your husband pointed that out and that you were able to implement it more consistently. So just a few more questions for you, Katie. So you and I worked on something called charisms. And for those who aren't aware, charisms are God's free gift to us, where as baptized Christians, we are basically given, I call them spiritual superpowers, where we're able to complete our daily tasks through his energy, through his strength, through his creativity. And we're all gifted with these. Everyone has a charism. And so can you tell us a little bit about what your charisms are and how you've seen them play out in your life and in the work that you do?
Yeah, so my charisms, and I don't remember like the order. But there's teaching, which was very high and I love. So that was not a surprise. And then leadership, administration, hospitality. I guess I can't think of the other one, but yeah, I think those speak a lot to what I do and to where I've kind of ended up, or where I am right now. I shouldn't say ended up, where I am right now. And the administration part is funny because, like, maybe a few weeks ago, one of the Marian sisters who works at the St. Gianna home here in Lincoln, we were visiting and she was kind of making a comment because I send a lot of emails to staff, you know, about parking, about policies, about days off, on protocol, you know, just a lot. And so she just made a comment. She's like, oh, another email from Katie. And so but it was another one of those like admin emails.
Oh,
But she, you know, said it with charity. And it was just kind of like, yep, admin. So I can just embrace that charism. But then the teaching too, like really feeds my soul, and I love opportunities for that. And I think that's certainly more of like my approach to leadership, is that I always want to either provide knowledge or information to my team as I've learned it, and then I always want to see them develop and kind of grow in their own area of expertise, and looking for different opportunities that would help them get there.
Yeah. Oh no, that is great. And actually that's the feedback I received from your staff, that they know, I mean, that they enjoy that aspect, that you have a lot of confidence in them, and like you will equip them and then they're able to excel. So I think that also reflects in how you manage Totonga Bomoi, like equipping the women there, and then they're able to thrive and excel. So it's interesting to see the parallels between the two.
Yeah, definitely. Because, gosh, I don't know how to sew. I mean, a little bit, but no, they're the experts.
Yeah. And so one last question. What would you say to someone who is like wanting to do something with their lives, in terms of like they feel like they've been gifted in a certain way, either through they become more aware of their charisms or just through different experiences in their lives, but maybe they're afraid and they don't know where to start, and they almost would rather just stay small out of fear than dream big and actually do the work? Like, what advice would you give to someone in that position?
Yeah, I would say start by serving those around you. You know, so for me, it wasn't like one day I just decided to go to Congo. You know, there were so many steps that like got me to that point. And even in my role now, there were so many things that I did to get here. So I would say that you've got to start somewhere, and it's okay to start small. And so if you want to practice with a charism, or if you feel, you know, called to to learn more about charisms, I mean, I think that's another first step. But just like love the people around you and see those people as opportunities that can inform you on your gifts. Because there was something you said, Valentina, early on, that these gifts are not for us, right? They're gifts from God for others. And so holding on to those gifts and not sharing them is not what God intended. And so you really have to just kind of change your mindset and think about, your gifts don't belong to you, they belong to others. And so I think if you have that mentality, it makes it easier to give of yourself in whatever your charisms are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's actually what I tell myself often. Like when I want to shrink back even, or I want to procrastinate on something, I'm like, wait, Valentina, the world actually needs this. And not in like a egotistical way, but in just a recognition that other people are relying on me to use my gifts, just like I am relying on them to use their gifts.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So like learning who in our small group had intercessory prayer was also really powerful because I've gone to that particular person multiple times now with special intentions.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's just inspiring to know that like we've all been given different gifts, and it's not necessary that we all have the same. So yeah, just being aware and going to those people who have that gift that is needed in that moment, yeah, has been very empowering, I think.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Well, as we wrap up, if someone wanted to learn more about the Totonga Bomoi or even about Catholic social services, where can they go and how can they support?
Yes. So for Totonga Bomoi, I'm going to spell it out, but you would just go www.totongabomoi.org. And then certainly you can make a donation. You can view all the photos and videos of the women that we work with. We're also on social media, which I'm not super active on that. But you can definitely follow those accounts. Boniface will post more than I will because he's very good at taking a ton of photos of the women working. And then for Catholic Social Services, our website is www.csshope.org.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Katie, for your time. And I am just so excited just to see what will happen next in your life and your journey and through these organizations that you lead and support. And
Awesome.
thank you all for listening to today's episode. And I just, like Katie said, I encourage you to go out and just support those around you and to just take that next step because the world needs you. They need your gifts and they need just who you are and what you have to offer. So until next time, thank you for joining us and God bless you.